Well, it looks like the AI bubble is popping, and it's popping fast. And I didn't expect it to happen in this way, but it is happening. And I'm going to react to a couple videos and kind of get up to speed as to what's happening with this AI revolution or something like that, like a AI revolt of some sort or something like that. Yeah, let's just get started.
Over 50% of Americans have a negative view of AI. This is potentially the beginning of the American AI rebellion.
Oh God,
You can now
okay.
assemble a team of AI agents to help you with the parts that you could never accomplish on your own. When someone offers you a seat on
Oh,
the
oh,
rocket
she's
ship,
sign language. I was like,
you
what
do
the
not
hell?
ask which seat, you just get on. Graduates, the rocket ship
It's
is
a
here.
lot of people.
Let me give you some advice. First, find a way to say yes.
Oh
Say
no.
yes to an invitation. Say
He's
yes
saying
to
this
a
to
new city.
college graduates.
Yes, say yes to the project that is beyond your reach. Yes is how you get your first job, how you get your next one. Yes is how you stand out in a crowd.
I'm going to leave it at that. You can see the size of this crowd. You can see what was going on. This speech went down terribly. So, this is the article in question. Now, there has been a rising wave of negativity towards AI.
American rebellion against AI is gaining steam, and it's interesting to see because I thought this wouldn't happen until AI was more established or like more deeply rooted into society. I mean, it already is, but I thought, this wouldn't happen for like another 5 years or maybe 3 years. I don't know why I thought it would take so long, but I think people are catching wind now because things are so dire right now. So that could be why.
And rightfully so. And a lot of this comes down to the environmental impact. But I think mainly the messaging from the CEOs that run the companies that are building these AI systems. Let me kind of show you what I mean. So I'm sure you're all aware of the likes of Dario from Anthropic, Sam Altman from OpenAI, etc., etc. They like to speak about jobs being replaced by AI. You will no longer have to work, your job will be replaced. Obviously, they're not answering the question of how you will survive, what will you do for money, what will happen to the economy. They don't care about any of that, but they like to tell you
Of
your
course they
job
don't.
will be replaced. Now, Demis is the DeepMind founder. Obviously, this was sold to Google, and he heads Google's AI division. He is the only one that really comes out and makes statements I think make more sense. At least this is where I believe AI, and this is where my belief in AI is. I want to see it do this. I don't want pointless chatbots or AI creating additional work that no one really cares about. Or
What I want to see in AI and what I want to see in the industry that is clearly becoming very dominant in society, I want to see more developmental work being done with AI, as I've stated in other videos before, with animal communication and building cells or whatever he's about to talk about. I think the more scientific uses of AI should be, that's what should be pushed, not all of these filters and all of these other tools and all of these things that are supposedly make your work faster or does your work for you. None of that. Let's focus on how AI can make astronomy an even easier field to navigate or help look for planets with AI systems and algorithms. Why don't we focus on that? Why isn't that the focus and where all the billions and trillions of dollars is going to? Why isn't I'm sure that a significant amount of money is going to these branches of AI research, but it's still like it's clearly not enough, and it's clearly being pushed more towards taking jobs out and making everything automated. That's what's at least on the surface, that's what's being pushed.
replacing jobs that people are just good at. There's like no need for some of this replacement. And crucially as well, I don't want to consume AI generated entertainment, art, music, media. I think all of that is
Nope,
trash.
neither do
However,
I.
look at what Demis says here. I always believed in the number one application of AI should be to improve human health. This is what I agree with. That work started with AlphaFold and now Isomorphic Labs with the mission to reimagine drug discovery and one day solve all disease. We
See,
are turbocharging that
research
goal
like
with
that.
2.1 billion in new funding. Now, 2.1 billion is a lot. It's nothing to Google. They could pump a lot more into this if they wanted to. However, this is the type of language that I want to see. I
Hmm.
want to see, you know, AI is going to be used to further.
We are turbocharging that goal with $2.1 billion in new funding. That is quite a large amount. I did say billions. So, I mean, if this is true and that significant amount is going towards this sort of AI research, I think this is where things need to be headed.
Humanity, not it's just gonna just be used for a pointless chatbot, or to flood social media with fake content, or to just make crap. I also have got to say, I do think it is a little bit
Crap.
simplistic to just view the whole public
Slop.
perception of AI as just, oh, we hate AI, it's taking our jobs. I, I think that is kind of the issue, but I also think the issue is the economic impact as well, which is linked to that, and also the environmental impact of that as well. And this relentless chasing of more AI compute power, and we're not really seeing any beneficial results. Now, it,
Hmm.
it would be um, remiss of me not to say that if they came out, Google, and after building massive data centers all across the world, and said we've cured cancer,
Okay,
and they in
please.
turn have pledged much of that capital to fund data center construction. And again, this is that thing of what is the point of data center construction? What is the point of increasing compute? And the end game for these companies is essentially, if you own a company and you have staff, get rid of your staff. We will run your company. You will create AI agents. They will consume tokens. They will use our compute, our electricity, our water. We will
No,
charge you for
no,
this, and they
no.
will work 24/7, and they will be experts on every topic all at the same time, and you will have insane productivity. That is what they are saying to.
It's like that is just not where we're going to end up. It's wild how they think that this is how it's going to be by slating jobs out and putting AI systems in and expecting it all to be automated and no major issues to come about from that and losing people, losing human labor. And it seems like that's what the goal is for the industries of today is trying to automate everything now and use AI as much as possible to make everything as easy as possible, to save as much money as possible. I don't know. It's kind of wild when you think about it. It's nothing but greed. It's nothing but fad jumping and trend following and all for what? The sake of technology, the sake of making something a little bit easier to do. It's a little bit wild.
Companies. That's why they're always chasing more and more compute. And again, you can counter the chase for compute in some ways and say, well, if things get more efficient, then the chase for compute is not going to be as demanding and as stressful on the environment and the economy. The
Hmm.
problem is we're not there yet, and all these companies are involved in essentially an arms race to try and get as much compute as possible. Because if you become the de facto supplier of, the agentic AI powered workforce, companies are not going to change because they're going to become so intertwined with that system. Let's say, for example, you're heavily intertwined into OpenAI's agentic framework and it's running thousands of staff members that were people, but they're not anymore, they're now bots. You're not going to flip that over to
Hmm.
Anthropic. So there's this race to try and make them as fast and as intelligent as possible. And that means massive compute build out, which is a problem because of
Right.
obviously
Which
all this
means
stuff
more power usage, more water usage, more space needed, more facilities needed. It's wild.
is completely inefficient and it's just absolutely destroying everything. These companies are spending hundreds of millions of dollars in the midterm elections to fight the backlash. I mean, lobbying happens all of the time, but I think you've still got to be aware of it. But all over the
Hmm.
country, community-level organisations have been succeeding in blocking data centre projects. Local opposition blocked or delayed at least 48 project values that sum 156 billion last year, according to Data Centre Watch, an organisation tracking the trend. A record of 20 were cancelled in the first quarter of the year because of local backlash. Figures from climate media outlet and data provider Heatmap show dozens more are currently facing similar obstacles on top of obstructions because of permits and etc. and all those kind of problems. So I think like this again, this goes back to it becoming political, because if it becomes
Hmm.
political and your local representative, your local council members, your local member of parliament, whatever country you're in, if they are having to if they want to approve AI data centers for a certain reason, maybe they're going to get some sort of payout. Maybe there's going to be some sort of windfall for the area in terms.
Of course, it's all for greed in the end, is it not? I mean, fundamentally, at the core of it all, it's all for money and greed, and it's clearly not working out for them on the side of the public, and it's not going to end well. And they think it is. They think this is it. This is the future. How could humanity be so divided?
Terms of, I don't know, a company, I don't know, upgrading local services as part of a data center build up. Maybe they're going to build a new bus network, a new railway, I don't know, All this stuff I'm just kind of making it up as I go. This kind of did happen years and years ago. I think a famous example of this was the Wrigley family. I think in the States, don't quote me on this, but I think what they did is they started building
Mm.
massive like libraries and places like that, giving back to the people. Maybe if we can see that kind of thing happening with data
Something
centers,
like that,
maybe
sure.
people would be sort of more, I don't know, more attuned to having them in the local area. If I said to you, we're going to build a data center, but we're also going to give you free power forever if you live in this area, and also we're going to build a
Mm.
fancy new hospital, and it's going to be top of the range, and that's going to be free at point of use. You might go, well, okay, build the data center, but of course none of that's happening because these companies don't want to waste
Yeah,
money
false
on
promises.
anything that isn't actually additional compute. I've
It just sounds like there's nothing good coming from these companies and what their plans are for further AI development. And this is why the rebellion is starting, because we see that this is about to get very ugly. And these companies want to push for this development to happen. And we're fighting back. That's pretty much what we're rebelling against. So this girl also has a lot of interesting things to say about AI in general and what it could be and what is going to happen in the future, because right now things look like it's going to get worse, like it's going to get much more complicated with more AI development happening, more systems coming out, more jobs being lost, more, things in the industry being changed due to AI influence. So let's see what she says.
Last week at the University of Central Florida that I need to talk about. Gloria Caulfield, a vice president at Tavistock Development Company, that's a real estate and development firm, by the way, not a tech company, was invited to deliver the commencement speech for UCF's College of Arts and Humanities at the Nicholson School of Communication and Media. These are graduating writers, artists, journalists, designers, people who have just spent 4 years training to do things that AI companies are now claiming their products can do. I'm going to link the full speech in the description if you'd like to hear it, but let me give you the brief summary of the highlights that are relevant to our discussion today.
Alrighty.
Caulfield opened by praising Jeff Bezos and Howard Schultz as leaders of significant accomplishment, already a bold choice for a room full of humanities graduates.
The rise of artificial intelligence is the next industrial revolution.
Right. Oh, again, how can humanity be this divided and see the future of the world this this differently, this split?
Oh,
Oh,
what,
she's like,
what happened? Okay, struck a chord. May I finish?
because everybody sees what this is going to turn into. How can she's clearly a very intelligent and well mannered, high functioning woman. I mean, how can she not see it? Does she need glasses?
She then tried to recover with only a few years ago, AI was not a factor in our lives. The crowd cheered, which, and I cannot stress this enough, is not a contradictory response. They booed the future she was selling them, and they cheered the past when it didn't exist. This is not bipolar, which is what Caulfield called it. That's entirely consistent. Now, for context, the same graduation season, Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, gave a commencement speech about AI at Carnegie Mellon University, standing ovation,
Mm.
ecstatic reception, because Carnegie Mellon is a STEM school. Those graduates build AI. They see it as expanding their professional value. UCF's arts and humanities
Well,
graduates
that
see
makes
it as a
sense.
direct threat to the thing they've just spent 4 years and tens of thousands of dollars learning to
Yeah,
do.
that makes total
Same
sense.
technology, same message, opposite reactions. That alone tells you something important about who this revolution is currently working for.
Hmm.
One of the graduates, Howda Elter, called Caulfield a corporate mouthpiece and said to stand in front of a graduating class of artists and communicators and discuss Jeff Bezos and Howard Schultz is to spit on our efforts to flip the script.
Hmm.
And Caulfield, she
Spit.
posted on Instagram afterwards describing it as an extraordinary evening where she was humbled to spend the night igniting optimism and potential in our future leaders,
Mm.
which is a fascinating interpretation of being booed by several
Yeah,
thousand people.
she really
Software
interpreted it
engineer
that
Cable
way.
Sasser put it perfectly on Blue Sky. When you're inside the bubble, you think everybody else is, but everybody isn't. So, look, I watched this clip, and my first reaction was the same as a lot of yours: tone
Mm.
deaf, read the room, don't tell a graduating class of artists that the thing threatening their careers is the next industrial revolution and expect
Like, why
applause.
would
I
you?
get it, I felt it. But then I did the thing that having a PhD in computer science has unfortunately conditioned me to do. I asked, wait, is she actually right? Not in the way she meant it, not isn't this exciting,
Well, that's actually an interesting question to bring up, this girl. I would say, in a way, yeah, yeah, that I would actually agree because this is not going to stop. This is just only going to keep growing. It has grown in the last couple years since AI videos have been able to be easily produced. I mean, it has grown a lot and it's only going to grow. I mean, she's not really wrong. They're not booing at her because they think she's wrong. They're booing at her because they don't want her to perpetuate this truth, I guess, that is kind of inevitable. I mean, it really is. Unless there's just enough people and enough company influence out there to fight against it, but I don't think there is. I don't think anybody think there is. So that was a great question she brought up.
but factually, structurally, is AI comparable to the Industrial Revolution? So I went and looked, and I need to tell you what I found because the comparison is far more accurate than Gloria Caulfield intended, and that is precisely what should terrify us. Let's talk about the Industrial Revolution, not the version we learned in school: steam engines, factories, progress moving on, but what actually happened to the people who lived through it. The British Industrial Revolution, roughly 1760 to 1840, was one of the most transformative periods in human history. That part is true. It gave us mechanized manufacturing, railways, urbanization, and eventually the modern world, also true. But here's the part that tends to get left out of the inspirational commencement speech version. Workers, including children as young as 5, labor 12 to 16-hour shifts, 6 days a week, in factories
What?
with no safety regulations, no
What?
rights, and wages that
Between 1760 and 1840. Ah, wow. And we thought our times are bad.
barely cover the cost of living. Over 50% of workers in some British factories in the early 1800s were under the age of 14. Children were preferred because they were small enough to crawl under machinery to unclog it, and when the machine suddenly restarted, they lost fingers and limbs.
Oh my
In
God.
coal mines, children as young as 5 were stripped of their clothes, chained to coal carts, and sent into
What
shafts 16
the
inches high.
fuck?
Arriving late to work could mean a beating. Dozing off at your machine could cost you an arm. I want to pause and emphasize that these are not metaphors, these are documented historical
Ah,
facts. A
horrible, horrible,
technology
horrible,
executive
horrible.
in 2026 might describe this era as a time of profound change, which it definitely was, but it was also a time of mass child exploitation, industrial scale human suffering,
Just
and a general
horrendous.
decline in health, including increased tuberculosis, respiratory disease, malnutrition, and trauma. That reminds me of something, doesn't it? Destruction of traditional ways of life. The Industrial Revolution triggered an enormous demographic shift, pulling young adults out of rural communities and into urban factory towns. Entire ways
What
of
the
life,
fuck?
agricultural, artisanal, community based, were dismantled in a generation. People who
Jesus
had been
Christ.
skilled craftspeople found their trades automated and their skills worthless. This was not a gentle transition, it was a forced migration
Hmm.
from one economic reality into another, driven not by choice, but by the collapse of the old system's ability to sustain the people who depended on it. If you're a graduating humanities student in 2026 who's just watched AI generated content flood the market you were training to enter, this might feel somewhat recognizable. Then health and life expectancy. Here's a detail that should be in every school book and somehow isn't. Life expectancy in England stagnated between roughly 1820 and 1870,
Mm.
a 50-year period during the height of the Industrial Revolution, because rapid urbanization brought contaminated water, overcrowded housing, epidemic disease, and industrial pollution. Working class life
God.
expectancy at birth in industrial towns was often as low as 25 to 35 years. The dense smog
I really appreciate that she's bringing up the the historical darkness of work in the world, because God, I mean, being beaten for being late, I mean, and then being a child as well, like, oh God, that's just, oh my God, like,
that blackened industrial cities shortened lives and increased mortality rates across the board. An NBR study found that growing industrial coal use from 1851 to 900 alone reduced life expectancy by at least half a year, and the economic cost of that lost life was equivalent to roughly 0.3 to 1% of annual GDP. So the Industrial Revolution made the country richer. It also made its workers sicker, shorter lived, and more miserable for decades before the benefits
mhm,
started filtering down. Economists have found only a small rise in consumption between 1760 to 1820, 60 years of near stagnation,
wow,
with
wow.
rapid improvement only after 1820. And even that improvement was offset by environmental decay and inequality so severe that some researchers argue the unmeasured costs more than wiped out any gains in well being from rising wages.
So she's just pointing out that the history of financial suffering and I guess overall stability has been just quite horrific for people in the past few hundred years and certainly beyond. I mean, I guess the further you go back in time, it's just gotten harder and harder to survive, or it was harder and harder to survive. And we had much less technology and much less systems around to get things done, or at least kind of work the system to get, for your benefit. You didn't even have that back then. It's quite dark when you think about it. I can't believe she's just spitting this information like it's just and but it's true. It's very eye-opening too when she points out a lot of these facts. I mean, I should definitely do my own research on it and get a bigger picture on what life was like in the past 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, and just how difficult it was in the workspace and in the financial space, how hard it was to find money, make money, and to make a decent living and have a decent life where you have, everything you need without worry. But it seems like for most of the world, that's quite the not the reality. And she's definitely making a point. Oh, I mean, I muted it. Oops.
Before things got meaningfully better. Just let that sit for a second. Then, inequality. The wealth generated by the Industrial Revolution was extraordinary. The distribution of that wealth was obscene. Factory owners and industrialists accumulated fortunes while their workers, including the children, earned subsistence wages.
Oh,
Inequality increased steadily throughout the industrialization period,
damn.
and the gap between the people generating the wealth and the people capturing it widened year after year. In 2025, the ratio of US home prices to median household income hit a near record 5.1, up from 3.1% in 1985. 65% of American households cannot afford a newly built medium price home. The
Mm.
median age of a first time home buyer has risen from 29 in the 1980s to 40 today.
Oh,
Tech CEOs are becoming the wealthiest humans in recorded history while telling graduating students that the technology making them wealthy is an exciting opportunity.
and
Hmm.
it's AI. It's
Next,
just
let's talk
fucking
about political
AI.
disenfranchisement. Now, this one is my favorite, and I need to explain it in a way that makes sense for everyone watching. Before 1832, the British political system had something called rotten boroughs. These were parliamentary constituencies, essentially electoral districts, that had been created centuries earlier when they were actual towns, but has since depopulated to almost nothing. A village with 12 people might still elect 2 members of parliament. Meanwhile, Manchester, which had grown into the beating heart of the entire Industrial Revolution, one of the largest and most economically significant cities in the country, had 0 members of parliament. No
Oh,
political
wow.
representation whatsoever. The city powering the revolution had no voice in the system governing it. By the 1831 election, 152 out of 406 elected members of parliament were chosen by fewer than 100 voters each. 50
Mm.
constituencies had fewer than 50 voters. The system was designed for a world that no longer existed, and the people who benefited from keeping it that way fought furiously to prevent reform. For
It's just like throughout all of time, human greed has prevailed, and it it almost seems like the bad guy has won and continues to win and is winning right now. And it's a crazy reality we live in when you think about it. And it's always been this way. She's giving it all out right now. It's always been this way. Um, uh, Government and society has always had deep-rooted issues. It doesn't matter how big or small. It's always had uh, problems that run so deep that they are most likely unsolvable, or at least it would take an incredible amount of effort from the entirety of that society to make the change, and often that doesn't happen.
my American viewers, imagine if a congressional district that had a population of 30 people in rural Wyoming had the same representation as the entire city of Chicago. And when Chicago asked for a representative, the people benefiting from the old system said, absolutely not, this would destroy the fabric of governance. That's what was happening back then. It took massive popular demonstrations, threats to the monarchy, and a constitutional crisis before the Reform Act of 1832 finally abolished the worst of the rotten boroughs and gave cities like Manchester, Birmingham, and Leeds their first members of parliament. And even then, the working classes gained almost nothing. The reform primarily benefited the middle classes, and it took decades before ordinary workers got the vote. Now, think about the communities in Georgia, Maryland, and Virginia where data centers are being built without meaningful local consent, extracting water and electricity at industrial scale, and the residents have effectively no power to stop it. Think about the fact that I covered in a recent video how a county water director in Georgia responded to discovering unauthorized water extraction by a Blackstone subsidiary with,
Of
it's called,
course,
customer service.
of
The
course.
infrastructure of this revolution is being built inside communities that have no meaningful say over it. The rotten boroughs are not gone, they just look
So
different.
it's just further power over society. Wow, just it's like they're building these facilities that require a lot of water, but then now they're also building them in places where the area that they're building it in doesn't have the say to regulate. Uh, just really just gets worse and worse and worse, doesn't
Today.
it?
Let's talk about the reform question, and this is the part of the Industrial Revolution story that nobody includes in commencement speeches because it's just inconvenient. The Industrial Revolution did not automatically get better. The getting better part required massive legislative reform that elites fought at every single stage. The first Factory Act was passed in 1802 and was, by historical consensus, absolutely futile. It took another 30 years of campaigning, agitation, and political
Wow.
pressure before the 1833 Factory Act began to meaningfully restrict child labor, and even that only applied to textile factories. Factory owners protested that any restriction on working hours would force them to close their mills, which is a sentence you can
Oh, I just couldn't imagine being at the stage of protest at your job. Like,
transpose
what?
directly into 2026 by replacing factory owners with tech executives and working hours with AI regulation. The pattern was the same every time. Workers suffered, reformers documented the
Always the
suffering,
workers that suffer,
elites said
and it's
regulation
just
would
so
destroy
sad.
the economy, reformers pushed harder, elites resisted. Eventually, after decades, the laws changed, and the introduction of the 10-hour day proved to have none of the dire consequences its opponents had predicted. The economy didn't collapse, the factories didn't close, the predictions of disaster were wrong, they were always wrong, they were just useful for the people making them. So, was Georgia Caulfield right? Is AI the next industrial revolution? Yeah, she might actually be right, but probably
Yeah,
not in the way she
she
meant it.
just in the
The
worst
Industrial
ways, she's right.
Revolution was
Yeah,
not a
and she's
one off
thinking she's
squish
right.
that turned peasants into
She's thinking she's right in the best ways, and that's why she's being booed. Isn't that just something?
city workers. It was not a clean transition from old to new, it was a century of displacement, exploitation, environmental destruction, political disenfranchisement, and staggering inequality, followed by decades of hard won reform that only happened because ordinary people organized, protested, and demanded that the systems governing them catch up with the reality they were living in. The people
And that's what I mean. Change only happens when there's enough effort in within the society itself to then make those changes. If not, it doesn't matter how much, the ones under need and want and what's best for them. It doesn't matter. It only matters what the greed follows. It's wild. It's really like this is how the world works. This is how everything is webbed under, this is what the infrastructure lies over. Isn't that something?
alive during the worst of it did not experience the next industrial revolution as an inspirational talking point. They experienced it as their children losing fingers in machines. Every generation that has benefited from the industrial
Using fucking fingers and machines. I'm How are you gonna work after that? Like,
revolution has benefited from it because previous generations paid the cost and fought for the reforms that made the benefits possible. We are the beneficiaries of technologies the industrial revolutions created. We're also the beneficiaries of the factory acts, the reform acts, the labor movements, the environmental regulations, and the political reforms that ensured those technologies eventually served people rather than just the people who own them. And that is the question for right now. Not is AI the next industrial revolution? The
mm,
answer to that is probably yes. The question is instead, what kind of industrial revolution is this one going to be? Are the reforms going to come in year 5?
it's going to be another messy one for sure. It's going to be, my prediction would be that a lot of these AI tools and shit, they're gonna be put out, they're gonna be distributed, they're going to be established in the workplaces, and then it's all going to not work. They're going to see all the issues with it, and then they're going to start pushing it back and start saying, "Oh, we don't need this AI tool no more because it actually doesn't work for us. It actually slows down our process." Or we will look into other ways to roll back the AI. So I think that's kind of how it's going to go. We're going to push it anyway, even though it clearly shouldn't be. It's going to be established, put into all these systems, fuck up society, and then we're gonna roll it back and be like, oh shoot, we messed up. Like, ugh, if it does happen that way, that's gonna be very frustrating. But it, I can't really think of another way it could roll out. Let's see what she's got to say.
Or year 60? Are the people building the infrastructure going to be held accountable by the communities they operate in? Or are we going to wait until a citizen in Georgia has to file an FOIA request just to find out why the water pressure dropped? I generally don't know how this plays out. Nobody does. It's possible that AI delivers on its enormous potential and the transition is smoother than any previous technological revolution. I pray for that. It's also possible that it doesn't, but even the word bubble only applies if AI fails to deliver what is
And that shit is gonna burst, and and it's not gonna be good. And I mean, I think AI will find its place as well. Maybe when the bubble bursts, it will splash into the zones that I think it's best fit for instead of trying to blanket itself over the entirety of humanity. I hope maybe that could be another outcome of all this.
is supposed to deliver, and technology evolves continuously. So, the honest answer is that the uncertainty itself is the hard part. We're in a situation where the potential upside is extraordinary and the downside risk is serious, and nobody can tell you with confidence which way it breaks.
Yeah, it's like a high risk, low reward. Like not high risk, high reward where or yeah, where you know, if you go out and take the action, there's a high risk that you can lose everything and you might not get anything or something of the sort of that manner. But this is a high risk, low reward, I think, because what's the reward? AI everywhere and no jobs available and everything just run by automated systems. Is that a reward by any means? Is this what is this what these CEOs are like envisioning? Just everything completely, you know, AI driven, everything to down to the root of all of your systems? I don't know.
That is not a comfortable place for all of us to be in, and I understand why all of us are a bit scared. What I do know is that the pain of change is never distributed evenly. It wasn't during the Industrial Revolution, and it won't be now. The graduates in the UCF arena are not the same as the graduates at Carnegie Mellon. A writer in Orlando and an AI engineer in Pittsburgh are living through the same technological moment with completely different levels of exposure to its consequences. Telling both of them that this is an exciting thing is at best oblivious. Those students were right to boo, not because
Yeah.
Caulfield was wrong about the comparison, but because she talked about it as if it were good news to an audience for whom it very much isn't, at least not yet. The Industrial Revolution was definitely transformative. It was also devastating. Both things can be
Mhm.
true at the same time. And which one you experienced depended entirely on where you stood in the system. If you want a
Mm,
deeper look at what's actually happening on the ground, the water extraction, the noise pollution, the billions being
yeah.
charged to communities,
I just think there's just so much in this society that needs change. And obviously, when has that ever not been true, right? When has that ever not been a thing? I mean, in ways that I cannot perceive yet, there will be an equilibrium in the society, and at least with AI, like it will balance itself out in time. You know, look like if you look in the next 20 years, you know, it should definitely be a little bit more, you know, sure, it'll probably be more rooted in society, more, you know, ingrained into the veins of society, but hopefully it will be a little bit less egregious and less relied upon and less, you know, looked at under this lens of like, this is the future, this is what all of the world is going to run off of AI. It's just, I hope that really doesn't become a reality. And it seems like most people agree. So I think that's all I got for today. So hopefully you agree with, you know, all this AI crap. And if you don't, then, you know, that's that's just what it is. And you can let your opinion down below if you want. But yeah, have a good one.